Today on the Whole Person Podcast, I have Robert Riopel. He is an international best-selling author, app designer, entrepreneur, trainer who has spent the past 18 years not only traveling around the world, but also sharing his passion. He has also shared on stage and trained many of the top trainers and thought leaders of our world today. With high energy and heartfelt style, Robert draws on his own journey from humble beginnings to financial freedom at the age of 32 to inspire individuals tapping into their greatness, realizing that he is not the only person that struggles. So other individuals like you and myself can have better possibilities and find out what lies within ourselves so that we can become absolutely boss at what we do. Robert, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I am feeling blessed to be here because one of the things I love is the concept of being that whole person. Most people think it's just success. How can I get more money in life? And they don't realize that you can have all the money in the world, but if you're not taking care of the mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, financial, all those areas of your life, you're going to sabotage again and again. So happy to be here, Evan.
You bet. You bet. Well, man, I'm really just so interested in your journey to financial freedom. So let's just kind of start there. You were in $150,000 of debt. How old were you when you maxed that?
Well, I was 31 at the time when my wife and I got to that level before we were able to turn our lives around.
And what kind of debt was that?
Well, it was debt that came from basically instant gratification, I'll call it that, wanting to have all the toys. When my wife and I ended up becoming Dominos Pizza franchisees, which according to the world, we never should have been able to do because we didn't have the money to do it, we started making what we thought at the time was pretty good money. And when we became franchisees at 23, it was pretty good money. But what's interesting is as we started making more money, we started spending more. We wanted to have all the toys, all like 2 vehicles. We had one of our stores in a lake community, so we wanted a boat. And the funny thing is our busy season was during boating season. So even though we had a boat, it sat in our driveway looking pretty with all the expenses, but we never got to use it. So our debt got built up from just not understanding why we were spending money the way we were.
Gotcha. And so what did that feel like?
I tell people that financial stress is probably the biggest stress, the worst stress I've ever experienced. And it's something that I think a lot of your listeners can really appreciate as well, that it is a big, bad, nasty stress. And so it impacted all areas of life, health especially.
Yeah. Side note, I used to work for Domino's.
No way.
Yeah, dude, it was terrible. It was, so like I was working at a hardware store at the time, and that summer we had like 5 freezes in the summer, and I was in lawn and garden, and it killed so much inventory. It killed like $100,000 of inventory. And so the company decided to do some layoffs. And I knew I was one of the low men on the totem pole. And so ironically, the guy who owned Dominos Pizza was looking for a new manager. And I'm like, yeah, I could probably do that. But, he liked my work ethic and everything because our stores were really close. And so anytime he needed a nut or bolt or something, he came to the store. And he did this, like he interviewed me before he gave me the job, and I didn't know it was an interview. And it was at my job at Ace Hardware. And he was like, so let me ask you this, is it ever okay to lie? And I didn't have an automatic response. I didn't say yes, and I didn't say no. I was thinking that through because obviously you don't want to lie, but if you see an axe murderer chasing someone and that person's hiding, you're obviously not going to say, yeah, he's over there, go kill him, And so I paused and I didn't say a thing. And he goes, okay, you passed. You answered it correctly. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, you didn't give me an answer. You paused. You thought about it. That's what I look for in a manager. And so long story short, he basically offered me the job on the spot. And I simultaneously was going through real estate school at the time. And so I decided not to take the manager's position and to just take one of the in-store positions. That way I could still go through my real estate stuff because that was my ultimate goal. He was so bad at being a boss. Oh my gosh. His store got taken away from him a few years later. And I did not feel that bad after getting fired from him when his store got taken away, because, he just made up so many lies and excuses, and a lot of issues in the store was his fault for not managing properly or ordering properly, or having his sons work in there at the same time who would always fight. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. But Domino's took his store away. It didn't make
that's a kind of a common theme sometimes, because I love franchises because they have a system. And Domino's Pizza used to love to say that the average age of a franchisee is 23, which is the age my wife and I were when we bought the stores, because you had to qualify. You had to manage a store successfully to earn the right to be a franchisee. But what they didn't like to tell people is the average franchisee, the new one, would go bankrupt within 6 months. And the reason is because they'd come in and they'd change the system. Mm-hmm. I'm now the owner. Ego would kick in. I'm going to do it my way. And so it's interesting, when you share that story. I've heard a number of stories like that, because people were great maybe as managers, but as franchisees, terrible. And even my wife and when we look back, there's no reason we should have made it the first 2 years, let alone 9 years of franchisees, because it was a stumbling, learning, journey. But thank goodness we just wouldn't give up. And can we pause for a quick second?
Yeah.
My pet pig, she's having a freak out right now. I got to go. She must have rolled out of bed. I got to go get her set back up. Give me a moment. I'll be right back. Funny. I do.
Oh, that's awesome. That's funny. So how big is this pig? That sounded pretty monstrous.
She's 265 pounds.
And it's
and she's still considered a miniature. She's actually, here's a secret. She doesn't know she's a pig. She thinks she's a dog, so don't tell her. And she's.
When are you going to get some bacon out of this deal?
Yeah, not happening. No, not happening. And she's a princess. So yeah, she rolled out of bed, and because she's round, she got high centered and couldn't get herself up onto her feet. That's why she was freaking out.
That's funny. So
she's all good now.
So you're not gonna make any bacon?
No. We started bottle feeding her at 2 days old. She's now almost 10 years old, and she is family. I got to tell you. We are going to eventually write a series of children's book based on her called The Adventures of Gracie May. Because she's taught us so many life lessons. So many.
Okay. I've got to hear how a pig teaches you life lessons. Just expand on that for me, please.
Well, one is tenacity. If there's something that she wants, she is not deterred from it. She is going to be and if there's something she doesn't want to do, I'll tell you this, you will not get a 265-pound pig to do anything they don't want to do. So focus, tenacity. These are the kind of things, and a lot of people, they go, hey, I'd love to have a pig as a pet. And my wife and I educate a lot of people that they're more work than you think, and they're not like a dog where they always stay active. Adult pigs sleep most of the day. And so if you wake her up before noon, she's a grumpy girl. So
I'm really curious. I'm sure so is the audience. Potty training. What is that like?
Oh, hey, here's the thing. They are so smart. At a week old, we had trained her to hop into a tray, do her business on a pee pad, like a puppy training pad, and hop out. That's how smart they are. And this is one of the things we educate people on, is because they'll go, everybody thinks they want a miniature pig. And miniature pigs, for the most part, don't stay small. But what breeders will do, and look, I hope a breeder hears this, because I have problems with a lot of the breeders, is a pig can actually breed at the age of 3 months old. So a breeder will sit there and say, here's mom, see how small she is? That's how small your pig's going to stay. And yet a pig will grow to the first 5 years, to the age of 5, they're growing. And she's still considered a miniature at 265 pounds because in the wild, they grow to be 1,000 plus pounds. And yet people are thinking their pig's going to stay 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. That's it. And so all of a sudden when they get bigger, a lot of people then get rid of them, which is unfortunate, right? And so for breeders, the other thing that they do is they'll sit there and they'll go, there was a breeder that got shut down. She was charging $2,500 per pig, which, okay, I have no problem with that. Dog breeders and that, they charge more. But then she'd say, oh, and if you want your pig potty trained by the time you pick it up, so you don't have to worry about that, I'll take care of the complete training for only $500 extra. Not, the customer not knowing that they're that easy to train. You take hot-air popcorn, you can teach her to do anything. She loves her hot-air popcorn. So,
wow, that's did not expect this conversation, but I'm glad we're having it.
and it's true life because positive reinforcement. If you try to discipline her in a harsh way, you've heard the saying pig-headed. Well, there's a place that came from. If you try to discipline her, she will get pig-headed and nothing's going to happen. But if you use positive reinforcement, like I say, you can train her and get her to learn things instantly. It's very, very cool. And as humans, if we would kind of take on that same kind of mindset, watch what could happen for our whole life, right? And so, yeah, there's a lot of lessons. So we're going to do a series of children's books, and they'll be just short stories, and they'll be based on her real life, from 2 days old when we started bottle feeding her to where she is at the time.
So tell me how you used pig mentality to get out of debt. What was that process?
Well, we didn't have her at that time, but it does come down to focus. It really does. See, when we were in debt, we didn't realize the main reason we were in debt is because what we learned as children around money and wealth, we were now actually subconsciously, unconsciously using in our day-to-day life. And so as an example, in my family, I'm the youngest of 4. My wife, youngest of 5, both very, very poor families. And in my family, if times were tough, we made it work. My parents made sure we got through. We never went without food. We never went without the basics. But anytime times got better, we'd just instantly start spending the money. I remember, I think it was 1978, my dad got a $2,000 tax return. And especially in 78, that was huge. And all of a sudden we went from struggling to, well, we have this extra $2,000. Every one of the 4 kids, we got a new bicycle. My mom got a china cabinet and they bought a used vehicle. And all of a sudden the money's gone and we're back to being tight again. So I automatically ingrained, okay, when times are tough, you do whatever you need to do to get by. But if you get extra money, spend it. And so that's what I would do. And then I took it to a whole new level. I just kept spending. So we got in deep debt. And we had a lot of monthly expenses. And when people look at financial freedom, what they don't realize is there's a definition. What does it mean to be financially free? Well, the definition of financial freedom is when you have passive income, which I never even knew what that was. Passive income, to keep it easy, money working instead of you. Business working for you. And I'm going to guess, Evan, you probably have some passive incomes working for you because you seem like a pretty bright person.
Ish, yeah. I mean, we have a 401k and we have some cryptocurrency.
Okay. See, an ish. I love that word ish. I love the word ish. So most people don't even know that a 401k can work for them or that crypto, something like investments can work. So we had no idea. So we had no passive income, but we had a lot of expenses, which means we'd never have financial freedom. And we ended up, our first personal development that I ever was introduced to, we did a 3-day weekend that totally changed our mindset. We realized why we were spending money the way we were, why it was happening, that we took ownership, that we were the ones causing it. And the person teaching the course gave us one very simple instruction. He said, rich people think long-term, poor people think short-term. He said, so if you want to get financial freedom, take a look at your expenses and be willing to simplify. Simplify and really cut down. What don't you need right now in this moment that if you were to get rid of it, it would bring your expenses down, and then start working on passive income so that you can create financial freedom. And my wife and I sat down and we had some hard discussions. What don't we need right now? What could we simplify in our life? And we started cutting things out. Like we sold a boat instantly. We didn't need a boat. We weren't using it. So we sold it and got rid of the expenses. We were always working together in the stores. So we only needed one vehicle. So we sold one of the vehicles, got rid of the expenses. And so we dramatically started reducing our monthly expenses. And at the same time, we ended up looking into and studying and learning what are some passive incomes that we could use. And within 9 months, we went from that $150,000 in debt to actually our passive income surpassed our monthly expenses. So now we are technically financially free. But here's something I want your audience to understand, Evan, because and I'm going to ask the question to you this way. When you're reading my bio, when you're learning about me, and you heard that I went from $150,000 in debt to financially free in 9 months at the age of 32, did your mind at all think that that meant I was instantly wealthy?
No.
What did your mind think?
Well, being more versed in this area, my first thought was, what did he sell and how hard did he work? That was literally
see, and that right there is a snapshot of your programming, is that you think hard work is what's going to make you even more successful. So we'll talk about that in your show here as well.
Get out of debt.
To get out of debt. Yeah, well, and exactly. So what a lot of people, they will think, and because I've tested this with my audience around the world, is I'll ask them, I say, raise your hand if you think that meant I was instantly a millionaire in that 9 months. And the majority of the audience will put their hand up. And so then I say, now let me educate you. No, we weren't wealthy, but we were financially free. We had enough passive income to pay for those expenses. But here's where the magic works. Because now talking about creating wealth, hard work at getting out of debt, hard work to get wealth created. When we were running our Domino's Pizzas, we were working 60, 70, 80 or more hours per week just to earn that living. We know how to work hard. It was ingrained in us how to work hard.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, we're financially free. We don't have to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week in our store anymore. So we just freed up that much time. And there's a universal principle that says what you focus on expands. So we actually made a commitment to take 10.
Did you take like Keller Williams Bold class or something?
Nope. I haven't even heard that name. Have you ever heard of T. Harv Eker?
I have not.
And Secrets of the Millionaire Mind?
Nope.
Okay, that was my first introduction to personal development, and that's actually a lot of the material I teach all over the world.
Gotcha.
Pre-COVID, of course, pre-COVID. And so what we decided to do is we took 10-hour commitment. We said we will commit to 10 hours per week creating wealth. And all of a sudden now we still had 40 or more hours a week to do whatever we wanted, but taking that 10 hours a week and committing it towards actually focusing on creating wealth became very, very easy.
Okay, so I want to interject maybe some limiting beliefs that I may or may not have. I don't want to say they're limiting beliefs. It's just life. Okay.
Right.
So we have 3 boys who we love dearly. And so when you say spend 10 hours of doing that, we're just like, where's the time for my wife and I? She works full time. I work full time. And then when work time's done, it's literally all hands on 6, 3, and like 7 months. So like we're right in the thick of it. So maybe it's just not that time right now in our life. I don't know. But the other thing too is in terms of building wealth, we're at a unique stage because, or I shouldn't say wealth, but freedom, because right now, if we didn't have daycare expenses or private school expenses, things would be pretty cool. But we do have daycare expenses and a private school expense. And I look at that, and some people are like, oh, wow, you have private school. You must know. You have no idea how stressful it is. Like, it's not like, oh, this is extra. Like, this is sacrifice. Yes. This isn't extra. It's 100% sacrifice. It means we're doing without on a lot of other things. And so...
Yes. And those are that's not a limiting belief. That's you saying, this is a decision we've made. This is a commitment we've made and that we're now willing to carry through. So that same commitment, and that's exactly what's going to allow you to create more in your life. Now, but I want you to notice something that you did. What you grabbed onto was the 10 hours a week. But you missed the part where I said we freed up 60 or more hours a week to now have that 10 hours a week.
Gotcha.
See? So what I would recommend for you, because family is so important. And here's, again, why I love the concept of your podcast, because it's not about I'm going to get wealth at any expense. It's no, family's important. Health is important. Everything's important. How do we have that, make sure we're working on all of them? Because the one area, and I want your listeners to really get this, the one area you don't put focus on is the area that's going to sabotage everything else. So if you sit there and say, you know what? Okay, Robert said I'm going to spend 10 hours a week. So, honey, you and I are going to do this. The kids are just going to have to suck it up for the next little while. Well, that's going to come back and bite you down the road, because it'll be like, well, what happened all those years? We didn't get a lot of time with you. So here's where you start. I encourage my students to take 30 minutes a day, and just take 30 minutes and find a way to do one of three things. Either take that time to learn about different investments, just to increase their knowledge. So it might be reading a newspaper, it might be saying, stocks, I want to learn a little bit, or crypto, you mentioned crypto. I'm going to take 30 minutes a day to learn just a little bit more about crypto. That's one thing you can do with that time. A second thing you can do with that time is actually do some kind of investing. The biggest thing that people miss, and it's why I made it one of the steps in my book, is step number 3 in my book, Success Left a Clue, is take action. Mm-hmm. Most people just think, but they don't do it. So use that 30 minutes today to say, well, I'm going to actually, I've been learning about crypto. Let's get into it. And I'm not saying you have to jump full in and put a ton of money. No, you just start.
Right.
See, what people don't realize is doing the habits are more important than trying to be perfect at it, because you're going to be terrible in the beginning. And then the third thing you can do at that time is, as you get better and better, is look at other different kind of passive incomes that you can start, like a business that you can turn into a passive. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm ever saying success is going to be easy. Okay, you've got 3 kids, 6, 3, and how many months?
7.
First of all, congratulations. That's awesome.
Boys.
And oh, that's why you go, oh boy. And so
constant battle at my house. they wage war against each other on everything.
And which one's the most like you, would you say?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd probably say my middle child.
Yeah. I bet your wife could answer that question instantly. And so with keep making sure you're working on the whole person, I'm never going to tell people that success is easy. Now, it is simple, meaning there's systems, there's things people have done that if you do what they did, you can get the results. But it's not easy, because you do have to put the work in. And especially when someone's raising a family.
Yeah. One
of the reasons people don't create financial success is they get overwhelmed trying to figure out it all. And I'm going to kind of take it in this direction. Well, let me ask you the question. Have you ever felt overwhelmed before?
No, never.
Exactly. Wrong answer. Thank you for playing. Yeah, here it comes. He's looking for the button. I love it. Yeah, there we go. I love it. So one of the biggest reasons, because I get this question all the time, is why do people get overwhelmed, and how can I get through it? And on my perspective, overwhelm is because we see a goal or something that we want to achieve. Let's say financial freedom. And all of a sudden our mind instantly jumps 1,000 paces ahead of ourselves, trying to figure out, how's it going to happen? What's it going to look like? What do I have to do? How's it going to affect the family? How much time will I have with them? And they get overwhelmed because they're trying to figure it all out at one shot. And so my recommendation, and I'd love for you to do this with me, Evan, go ahead and just take a nice deep breath in. And let it out. And just come back to present right now and ask yourself a simple question. What is one step I could take right now to move towards that goal? And then take that step. There's a reason the saying says success comes one step at a time. but yet most people are trying to figure out 1,000 steps.
Yeah.
So anytime you get overwhelmed, just take in a deep breath and say, okay, right here, right now, what's one thing I can do to move towards that goal? And then take that step. But then now, once you've taken it, celebrate it. Celebrate it. Might be a fist bump or just like a yes, whatever it is, anchor it in so you honor yourself for actually taking one step. And then take another step. So in the moment, maybe you're trying to figure out.
When you say anchor,
sorry, go ahead. Say that again.
When you say anchor it in, what does that mean for people who might not know?
Well, it means doing some kind of physical movement so that it anchors into the cells of your body. It goes from your head down into your body itself. So one of the ones I love.
So it's like muscle
memory. And I'll get you to do this with me. It is absolutely that. Even though we're on audio, but I can see you, here's what I'd love for you to do. Take your hand, put it up in the air, palm face backwards.
Palm backwards.
And pat yourself on the back. Yeah, and then just pat yourself on the back. And
for those of you who
see,
I couldn't reach back there.
But you used your other hand to help out. That's awesome.
Go lower. There we go.
So it could be something as simple as just patting yourself on the back.
You must pat
giving
yourself
a high five.
To be able to reach that.
Yeah, well, that's because that's one of my things. As I want to make sure I acknowledge it. We're so, and I can only speak from my experience. I am so good at beating myself up.
Right.
I've had. I won't even just say years. I've had decades of experience beating myself up. So the moment I get the chance to acknowledge myself, and people go, well, isn't that ego? Isn't that being self-centered? Well, I'll tell you, I have a really good friend. I love what he says. He says, it's not being self-centered. It's being centered in yourself. See, we are afraid to let some of our greatness show. We're afraid to express. But if you authentically express your amazingness with confidence, not arrogance, that's not only going to help you move forward, but you're now going to attract people to you that are going to go, there's something about that person. I want to know what it is. You were sharing the story with Domino's. There's a reason that franchisee was attracted to your energy and asked you that question and wanted to hire you. Because you weren't even having to say the words, but your energy was reflecting confidence that you have in yourself. And how many people do you meet, Evan, that you can look at them and you can tell that they have such self-doubt, it's holding them back from doing even better things. Yeah.
All the time.
And they don't even have to say a word. Mm-hmm. So this is, again, when you're talking about the whole person, taking care of the whole thing, it's a journey, it's an exercise. And if you are willing to enjoy the journey, be nicer to yourself, and be willing to make adjustments along the way, you'll be amazed at what you can create. Mm. I'm watching the wheels turning in your head.
Right? That's funny. So, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so where are you right now? Where did you just go? Because you are in your head.
Right. Well, I think where I'm at in my head is what it would take to move towards more passive income or at least less expense. And so right now, time is one of the big struggles because not only am I doing this podcast, not only do I have a real estate business, and I'm also starting a ministry. You know, the best way for passive income probably would be through the podcast in terms of finding a way or finding the needs of those that listen and the needs of other people around me and what they want training in, develop a course that can function without me, and then that sell. That would be.
So that is a possibility, but let me ask you this question. Because I'm noticing the hesitation and you're trying to process it, and you're now 1,000 steps ahead. So bringing you back to present, the question is this. In your reality right now, do you feel you have the time to do that, to create that course?
Not at all.
So then that's what's going to cause more stress and struggle for you, which is then you're going to become busy, but not necessarily productive.
Right.
So are you following what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the resistance and the hesitation is going to come up, because now then you're going to get frustrated. You're going to beat yourself up. It's going to take time away from my family, so I'm not keeping on those commitments, and you're going to sabotage. So you mentioned you have a real estate company. Okay. What do you do in your real estate company? Are you an investor? What is it that you do?
I'm a real estate agent.
You're a real estate agent. Okay. Excellent. So how long have you been doing that?
8 years.
8 years. And have you actually done, so you understand the real estate industry fairly well.
Correct.
Okay. And have you ever done any real estate investing on your own?
I have not. And
How
now,
come?
why? 2 reasons. One, I've never been in a good financial position to be able to invest until recently. That being said, so I'm looking at investing several ways. One, I invest my money and I try to reap the majority of it, or I work at finding other investors, use their money, but since I'm doing all the legwork, I keep 50% or whatever
That's right. Yeah.
And so that has basically been the struggle point. I've talked to a few people and it sounded good. And then when I was like, all right, let's do this, it's like, oh no, never mind. And so I just keep on doing what I do, which is sell houses.
Right. So again, there's a resistance point hitting up because it's something that you've worked on, and now your mind's going, do I have the time to fully make it work?
Right.
So we've checked out 2 opportunities or 2 possibilities. So I'm going to give you a third one.
Yep.
And I want you to track with me on this and check this out. How many podcasts have you now done? How many episodes?
Dude, I'm probably like on 120.
All right. And you said you have a producer, and you have a producer and you have an assistant, correct?
Yep. And an editor.
And an editor. See, and this is a new realm I just entered in. See, I did 104 episodes of my podcast, but again, I haven't recorded an episode in over 2 years. But the reason I did my podcast was not so much as to build the podcast, but it was to capture the amazing information that just happens in natural flow of recording a podcast. And so because you've already got 100 plus episodes, one of the things I would suggest or recommend to create a passive income that can help you go is I just had one of my assistants go through and categorize. I asked them to take and go through the transcripts of all my podcasts and categorize them. She came up with 6 different categories. And now I have on Fiverr.com, I have someone creating PDFs of each of those categories and taking my transcripts, writing them so they flow nicely, and putting some illustrations, very inexpensive to do on Fiverr. And now I'm going to have a series of 6 PDFs that I can use to lead capture and or do a bump up sale without me having to do a lot of extra work, because I want it automated, because like you, I'm busy. Like you, I want to make sure I have balance in all areas. And passive income, why not have that evergreen generic where it could be something as simple as, hey, ladies and gentlemen, if you love what you're hearing on the podcast, we've put them into categories, and we have these e-booklets that you can get, any one for $7, or get all, however many you come up with. For me, 6, all 6 for $25. Click on the link in the show notes and pick that up. And now you can have that evergreen, and you can have people creating and buying, and it's now, once you set it up once, is producing for you. And because you've done a lot of the work already, it wouldn't take you much to make those adjustments and turn it into a passive income.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
See, you're a thinker.
I am.
You're a thinker. And that is one of your greatest assets, Evan. But here's the other thing. It's also one of the biggest things that holds you back.
Probably. Well, what's funny though,
and
I'm going to say yes and no, because I used to be the guy like, oh, I thought it, and then I just run with it. And it would just, how can I put it? I would wing everything. And that wasn't any good either. So now I try to do things with a little bit more planning and preparation so it turns out better.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, everything you've done and everything you've gone through has made you who you are today.
Right.
And so honor that instead of saying, well, I used to wing it, that didn't turn out good. Now it's like, look, from that I learned, and here's how I'm now going to use it. And utilize that because, if you've already got 3 youngsters, you're already doing real estate, you're already creating things, you are, believe it or not, thousands of steps ahead of most people. But yet, unless you allow yourself to own that, and this is where, and this is why the celebration comes in, it's so important, is because most people, they forget to actually celebrate and acknowledge. Because maybe as a child, they're taught, don't brag. No, you speak your truth and do it with confidence, again, not arrogance. It's not like, hey, look how great I am. It's like, I guess I have done some stuff. And because of that, I'm in the position I'm in today.
Yeah.
And you own it. And by owning it, that's going to allow you to move forward.
So when you hired someone to do that, did they listen to all well, it might be a little bit easier to listen to your 5 to 10 minute episodes than my hour-long episodes. So I think the price difference might jump up a little bit there.
Well, yes and no. So here's what I did, and I'll give you the whole details, is right from the beginning, as soon as I record a podcast, one of the things I have done is it's transcribed automatically.
Okay.
So that I could put each transcript on my website. And I used Fiverr.com. Amazing woman and her team. For every one of my episodes, for up to 15 minutes, $5. So it would cost you maybe $20 to transcribe any, and you could probably nowadays do it even cheaper for an hour long. And I did that right off the bat so that as soon as someone goes to my website, not only can they listen, which is some people are auditory, some people are visual, they can now read the transcript if they want as well. And then I hired a virtual assistant. I've got some amazing people, and it took her 3 days. She was going to go longer because she was reading it all, but then she started listening and she was able to go through it quicker in the categorizing. And then from there, I just went, now that I've got the categories, I went back to Fiverr and I said, I've got here, what can you do? I would like to see a PDF with some, things put into it. An amazing woman just finished my very first one. She just sent it to me to look at. She's got great graphics in it, 35 pages long. It's now an ebook.
Yeah.
And it took me very little effort. And I'd say in total, so that one had 9 episodes in it. So maybe I spent $40 on the transcripts, plus then $150 to have the PDF done. For under $200, I now have a money-making, generating PDF that can be used and bought again and again and again and again and again.
How much total was that?
About $200 to put it all together.
That's nice.
Right? See, and that's the mindset. This is what I want you and your listeners to understand, because you're talking about mentoring you. And this is why I'm honing in on you, because what we're talking to you about, I guarantee there's numbers of your listeners that are getting some nuggets of gold right now, or clues, as I like to give them.
Well, that might not be directly.
And the question then is
something else that they can apply.
Absolutely.
As an example, because we're talking.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's it. That's where some of the greatest ideas can come from, is notice what other people are doing. How did they do it? Open up your mind to other possibilities, because we get into that tunnel vision. There's a saying that says, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Like, as an example, when I was sitting in the first audience as a student back in April of 2001 or March of 2001, if back then someone had said, Robert, you're going to go on to become a world-class trainer, international best-selling author, traveling around the world, and personally train over 500,000 people, if someone would have told me that, Evan, I would have told them they were absolutely nuts. Why? Because it wasn't in my perception at the time. But I was open to new ideas, which I used to be one of the most closed down people out there. I grew up in a society. Well, you know what the term redneck is, correct?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, the city I live near, where we have our acreage, is called Red Deer, Alberta, and its nickname is Redneck Red Deer, because it is very redneck, and that's how I grew up. So I had a very limiting beliefs. And that's why even when someone said, oh, you should, I'll date myself here. my brother-in-law, he said, there's this guy named Tony Robbins. I bought his cassette tapes. You've got to listen to these. It'll change your life. And I'm like, why would I do that? I'm good. I don't need any of that stuff, because I wasn't open to it. But the moment, out of necessity, financial debt, necessity, I finally opened up to, well, something's obviously not working. I need to do something different. That's when I changed, and I started realizing that there's more than just one way to look at things.
Right. Interesting. So in this process of becoming financially free and finding time to plan for it, what are some other important aspects? Because I think, let me rephrase this. Let me reiterate what I'm hearing in this process. One, you created margin in your life because you were maxed out with debt and time and capability. And so you looked to shed dead weight. And
correct.
You shed that, and then that gave you margin. And when you have margin, then you can operate in that margin to create systems and other things of freedom, which then in return gave you more margin.
Correct.
Okay.
See, you got to figure it out.
Right. Well, again, my head's going 10 different directions on like, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. I'm just trying to stay in my lane with starting the ministry, continuing the podcast, and staying consistent in real estate.
and see, that's the key right there. Instead of getting scattered, choose one or two of those lanes and stick with them.
Yeah.
My new book is called The Authority Master Key that I'm writing right now. And I talk about what's the authority key, and I call the master key. Mm-hmm. And the master key, I use the acronym VITAL. And the L in VITAL stands for loyal. You've got to stay loyal to your dreams, which means when you pick it, stay with it. Most people give up too easy.
Right. You know, it's funny because ministry has been a dream. Podcasting has been a dream. My career as a real estate agent, I love. And I'm really glad I have that other than working on another thing. But I got into real estate because I wanted to be an investor. But I've gotten in this rabbit hole of being stuck. I've pigeonholed myself where I've just allowed myself to be a real estate agent versus an investor. And so if there's an area that I need to move, well, and here's the other thing too. So like my what I put into cryptocurrency, my hope is that in 2 or 3 years or less, that it would grow to the point where we could pull the money out and then pay our house off. And then that creates more margin. And with that, not having to pay the mortgage, then we can go back and use in a rental property. That would be my setup, I believe. That would be my goal. Versus that money and going to buy a rental property, I'd rather be out of debt myself and then use what money we have monthly for a rental and then get someone in there and then they pay that off.
Which is great, but also understand, Evan, there's good debt and there's bad debt.
Right.
Okay. And so as an example, what you're talking about and what you just shared with wanting to be able to use, say, the profits from crypto to pay off your house so that you now have money to go do something else.
Which I'm a long way away from, just FYI.
Well, and look, hey, I have, my wife and I 3 years ago bought this beautiful property we're on. And the main reason we bought it is to be able to build our training studio so that instead of me traveling around the world, we can actually have my students come see me, which is another form of setting up an income, right? But one of the things that we've always done with our homes is when we've kept a mortgage, because to me, and it's different than way, say, like a Robert Kiyosaki might think. He says, that your house is not an asset, it's a liability because it's an expense, right? But the way I look at it, especially with where interest rates are right now, I would rather have the low interest on my mortgage and utilize some equity in my house to get other investments going. And that's what we've always done. And that's one of the reasons we've been able to have the success that we have, is because instead of focusing on, and this is a mindset thing, what you focus on expands. If you look at universal principles, what you focus on expands, law of attraction. So if you're focused on getting rid of your debt, you're actually focusing on debt, which means you're going to keep creating debt. And you're not, subconsciously, you're going to be doing it.
I hear what you're saying.
You're not aware of it.
I hear what you're saying. I'm slightly disagree. And here's why. In terms of using the equity in your house to go buy other rental properties or whatever, having been in this industry for 8 years, I've seen more people royally screw themselves because they maxed out their own debt on their own house, and then the investment didn't go well, and now they're stuck in a bad place financially. So I would much rather, again, build the margin and then operate out of margin versus capitalize on using debt that way. And then in terms of you focus on expands, I agree with that. But I think we're going to disagree on this, which is fine. You said if you focus on getting out of debt, you're focusing on debt and therefore you're going to create more. I disagree. I think if you're focusing on getting out of debt, what you're focused on will expand, which is you're getting out of debt more rapidly, because that happened in our own life. I had around $35,000 of debt between student loan, car, storm shelter, and medical expenses. Yeah. And other than medical expenses in our house, everything else is paid off.
Yes. And we're saying the same thing. We're absolutely the same thing. And this is actually that missing piece you were talking about just a few minutes ago. See, having a way of reducing your debt as part of a system of managing your money and taking care of your finances, absolutely. Because now it's something that you're doing. You're paying it down. But most people, they put all their focus. That's what I'm referring to. The reason they're so stressed out is because they're going, oh my goodness, look at all the debt I'm in. I've got to put everything on getting out of that debt. And that's what creates the other effect of it. So you're right on track with that. And that's why when we teach people, it's about paying down debt, past debt is part of your plan. You make it part of the plan, not your sole focus.
And the other thing too is when we were paying down debt, we made sure we had $5,000 in savings first. And the reason why is because I noticed any emergency that we had, even though the baby step of Dave Ramsey is $1,000 isn't much to get you out of an emergency. And so what I found
especially today.
And what I found out specifically, we would keep $1,000 in savings and then we'd work down paying out debt, and then an emergency would happen and then we'd have no option but more debt. And so I reversed it where I put more down in our savings account. That way, when the emergency did happen, it didn't cause us to go back into debt. And then we also just kept, what's the word? Debt snowballing out. And then that took a process of about 7 or 8 months, I would say, to get down. Now we still have medical debt. And this is where I'm leveraging what you're saying. I right now could go pay off all our medical debt. I'm not going to, because one, I have an HSA that we're putting money in tax-free to pay that. So I'm not going to spend additional money that is taxed to go do that. And the other thing too, there's no interest on it. And so I'm just, to me, it's like,
that's a smart debt.
Yeah. I'm just going to, I see what you're saying. I mean, it's smart because we didn't die and we had to go to the hospital. So yeah. But instead of trying to pay it off all out.
But right. That's the part I'm talking about. Smart is you're going, hey, this is costing me the same whether I pay it down slowly or if I pay it all at once. So that's what I'm saying. That's smart, is the way you're doing that, right? Now, let me ask you this question, Evan. Do you believe that words have power?
Of course.
And so in our just last minute and a half of conversation, one of the things, and let me ask the other question. Do you believe in the law of attraction?
Probably not in the same way that you do.
Okay, cool.
There's a lot of people that look at The Secret as, speaking things in the universe. As a Christian, I don't believe that the universe does that. I think there are actual laws such as gravity that have been created in this dimension that we live in. Because whether people realize it or not, there are multiple dimensions of creation, and we're only in this one, and we can only see in this one. So there are different levels of the metaphysical, like legitimately, this is true and scientific and spiritual. Like, this isn't me making stuff up. And so when people talk about energy and freak out over, oh my gosh, you said energy earlier and the law of attraction with energy. No. So, think of a radio. The reason why I can have radio in my car is because there's two transmitters, one's sending, one's receiving, and it's an energy wave going in between. Our bodies have a nuclear capability that if it took all the stored energy in our bodies and put it in a bomb, it would be nuclear. That's how much stored energy our bodies have. And
absolutely.
Just like radio frequencies, our bodies have energy that transmits.
Everything is energy.
Yeah,
everything is energy.
The way God created it is everything is energy. Now, here's where people get.
Yes.
Just for those of you who are.
Okay. I'm going to back it up though, real quick, because I love where this is going. And the reason I was.
Go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that stops people financially is because of a word that you used.
Okay.
I have an emergency fund. They've been taught to have an emergency fund. So if you talk about energy, having an emergency fund, what word are you putting out to the universe? That there's going to be an emergency. So you're actually creating the reality of emergencies coming into your life. So one little adjustment is, instead of having an emergency fund or a rainy day fund, because with a rainy day fund, you'll get lots of rainy days where you're going to need that money, create a contingency fund. Because not even the universe knows what the hell that means, right? And one little change in your wording can make all the change in the world, because I'm a huge believer in having that contingency fund off to the side. And it can be invested making money that if I ever needed it, it's there. But not going, here's my emergency fund, because I don't want to attract emergency. Because you're right, everything is energy. And whether we're speaking it or feeling it or thinking it, we're sending those energy waves out. And there's a receptacles. And again, I love that you're about to talk to, say, people, to Christians, that, God is receiving that. But it's like, why isn't he or she, whatever you want to go by, why aren't they, I asked for this. Yeah. Why am I not getting back? Because I've learned in my journeys that there's one is, you set out, if you've heard of Garth Brooks.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess. One of my favorite songs is "Some of God's Greatest Gifts Are Unanswered Prayers." If we got everything we wanted, careful what you ask for. Some of our greatest gifts, some of our greatest blessings come from what we thought we wanted or didn't want, but what showed up. If you're open to what comes into your life, that's where things really work out. And that's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But I'll go back to the rabbit hole you were going down. I just wanted to touch on the emergency.
Well, in terms of energy, there's, in New Ageism, they look at God as energy. But we know that's not the case, because God is outside of matter and time. Therefore, he can't be energy. The Creator created energy. And so for people that in spiritualism and New Ageism that looks at God as energy, it's just wrong. But as Christians, don't be freaked out when people talk about energy, because it literally is space, time, and matter that God created, which are some of the fundamental design of how the physical world operates.
Right.
And knowing the laws of energy so that we as individuals can operate in a world that is created with these unknowing, unconscious laws. And I shouldn't say unknowing, because we actually know a lot about it just through science and how radio and TV and internet and all these things work. It's just on a cellular level, as human beings, we don't view ourselves the same way.
Right. Absolutely. And with it, there's something called entrainment.
Right.
And entrainment is, for those who may not know what that means, that's the fancy word for like attracts like. And so whatever you're truly in alignment with of the energy you're putting out, that's what it's the energy that it's going to connect with. It entrains. The like energies come together. That's why they call it the law of attraction. Like attracts like, and they come together. So if you're, truly in alignment with, I really want to create financial freedom, and you're in alignment with putting that energy out, not just in your thoughts, but your now actions. What are my actions towards financial freedom? Well, I'm going to think before I just make an immediate instant gratification purchase. I'm going to think before I take on extra debt. I'm going to evaluate. I'm going to do my due diligence. Well, Robert, I did investing and I lost on a lot. Okay. But they lost my money. Well, you're the one that gave them the money to invest. So take ownership that you're in control of it. And when you get fully in alignment with whatever it is you want to create in your life, think about people that are very, spiritual and religious, that when they fully get in alignment with not only believing in God, but understanding his word, studying it and looking at it, that's when they find their life goes in a much different direction than when they just went, I'm going to play it believing I'm a good Christian, whatever you go by, right? So it's that full alignment in whatever direction you go in. Financial freedom, your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, financial, all areas. Coming back to that wholeness that you're talking about with your podcast, you have to be focusing on all areas, not just one.
Right.
And watch what that can do for your life.
Perfect. Well, Robert, thank you so much for coming on today. I like to end our show with the same 3 questions. And so the first one is, in terms of negative self-talk, what do you currently struggle with?
Oh, for me, it's still the self-doubt of not being good enough. Who am I for people to want to learn from?
Yeah. I think a lot of us, including myself, struggle with that one. What's the best decision you've ever made?
To marry my wife.
What brings you peace?
Being with family.
Awesome. Where can people find you and connect with you if they want to?
Yeah, if they'd love to get a hold of my book, Success Left a Clue, as a gift to them, I'd love for them to be able to get the ebook version of it. And they just simply go to robertriopel.com and they can check it out and be able to download it.
And spell your last name?
With letters. I had to get my warped sense of humor in there, Evan. It's RIO P as in Peter EL. So Riopel. So just robertriopel.com.
Awesome. Any last words that you want to share before you go?
Yeah, I believe the greatest gift that anybody can give the world is to be themselves. Show up for being you and always live with passion.
Awesome. Robert, thank you so much. And I hope you have a great day.
Pleasure being here.